Cherie, one of the things that I remember reading, there's some books by a guy who hypnotized people into, and then suddenly past lives were coming up, and that wasn't his intention, and it shocked him, and he resisted it, and finally he wrote about it. And then some in-between lives came, and that shocked him, and then he ended up writing about it. And so he's got these books about the soul and what happens on the soul side, after we leave here, and the agreements we make with other souls. And I remember seeing that there was one story where these friends decided, okay, you need to grow in this way, so I'll play the bad guy this time because you played the bad guy the other time. And so on my table, I've had so many people, as I put my hands on people, I started seeing those past life patterns, and I started seeing the ancestral patterns. And so what I saw one time, even that somebody came into their ancestry years ago, way down the line, and did something terrible, and then came in purposely into that same family line to help heal whatever they did in that lifetime.
Yeah, I've had that numerous go rounds.
And
with different people, right? And I think that whatever level we are in our game, right, it's like tying up loose ends with whoever we can tie them up with.
Especially now, and that so many agreements were made that, like if a person, for instance, had in this lifetime, so many had been raped and that kind of thing. And when they found out what happened, what they did in another lifetime to that person, it just freed them because the karma was over, and they realized.
And maybe it's not about what that bad thing was. Maybe it was about the journey out of negative thought.
Right. To help free them at this particular time.
I had a healer say to me right at the beginning of my journey, right? You set all this up so that you'd stay awake and keep your magic intact. Pissed me off. Totally pissed me off. Right? Totally pissed me off. But is that the reality and the truth of what this journey has done? Right? And I watched magic showing up all around me all the time. Right?
And you saw patterns.
And I saw the patterns, and and as a little bitty girl, I saw a lot, right? And my dad and his rage, right? I always saw a 15-year-old boy.
Oh, yeah.
And he would always cry when he would be in a rage. And his tears always had little green worms in them.
Oh, what? Green words?
Worms.
Worms. Oh.
Right? Like something was just eating him.
Yeah.
Right? And, there was always this connection with us that did not match what was happening. Right? It just didn't match what was happening. And through the rise up, right, there were a lot of lives revealed, right, that we just had been in every format of relationship that we could have been in, we had been in, right? We had traveled together for a really long time. Now, you know what's interesting is I walk into his house, and front and center, Black Panther statue about this big. Right? I was like, what?
So he saw the panther too.
Yeah. His partner said he came into the relationship with that and would never tell her the story. Right? Another interesting thing is my boyfriend of that time, who really like oddly took on my parents. Like if you go to his Facebook page, it's a Black Panther with green eyes too. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, it is.
Capacities, right?
There was another person whose father had been her husband in a different lifetime, and she died early, and he came back in, and that was the connection and why he was so sexually attracted to her in this lifetime.
Oh, that's my dad and I. The last time we were together, I was his wife. And it was very interesting that, like, my mother would say to me, like, anytime I'd try to leave, she'd say, I can't live here without you. Right? Because I was that role to him in a lot of ways, right? And through the years, that was a lot of the healing was, you know, every time he called, I would just drop everything and run there and take care of it all. And then I'd vanish again. Right. And once Carol came into the picture, I didn't run anymore. You know, I didn't step into that place, and that felt complete. Right. But yeah, when I was pregnant at 17, like he'd rub on my belly. It was the creepiest freaking thing ever.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
When did you remember all of this? Did you know it from the very beginning? You know, like you remember 6 months being smashed around and, you know,
Oh,
bad things
well, I
happening to
mean,
you.
from the very beginning, I had body memories of something really bad happening to me when I was a baby. And I was constantly asking questions around that. And I remember at about 13, now my dad was always in my bedroom, always at night in my bedroom. And he wandered around a lot in the night. Like my youngest brother, who was 9 when it all was over, he slept with a knife and a baseball bat, right? My brother made me this like bat club that was like this big to keep with me all the time. That's how we lived, right? As far as the sexual stuff, I had memories of the day I stayed present to stop it. Right now, I had hit that point with everyone all at one time. I just started fucking fighting everyone. Like, and I'm talking fighting everyone. My dad had me pinned to the refrigerator, right? His hand, like, and I was just like, go ahead, man. If you hit me, you are going to prison.
Take your best shot.
You're going to prison because I will have you put away for the rest of your life. And he backed off, and I have a picture of being asleep and him being over the top of me, his tongue in my mouth, and I just hauled off him and hit him. Right? That was the last time. Right? There were pictures of him always leaving my room. Right? I always had glimpses of him leaving my bedroom. Or standing in the corner, like looking at me.
Yeah.
I had, you know, like I said, the shower, like never did I take a shower without it being walked in on. But when it came into my awareness that it was more than that, I had already processed everybody else. Like I I was probably in my early 50s, you know, when I actually said out loud, I was working with a healer and I said, you know, I really think my dad molested me. And she was like, oh, you didn't know that? Right. And I was like, well, I knew, but I didn't know. Right. Which it wasn't the greatest way for her to say that to me. Right. It was not the greatest way for her to say that with me because I was swimming in that for a while. But then I had another healer. This is why you're on mute, Julie, in case you didn't know, because it looked like you were trying to talk, but I can't hear you. This is one of my things about, quote, psychics, right? Is I had another psychic tell me that he didn't do it.
Oh, really?
Wow.
Right. And she was actually teaching a medical intuitive class that I was taking.
Oh,
And she just out of the blue walked up to me and she said, I know you're grappling with the idea that your father molested you, and I just want you to know he didn't.
oh my gosh.
Right?
Amazing.
Have to be very aware, very careful with psychics, like, because that information that they're bringing forward they have to be done with all their old stuff, or, you know, it can influence the information. It can influence the information. I'm psychic too. I'd rather lead you to the truth than tell you the truth because, right, I could just be saying anything. Anyway, I had two different really powerful psychics telling me two completely different versions of the truth.
And how old were you at this time?
I was in my mid to late 40s.
Wow.
You know, because I had the first psychic was helping me, like as a healer. The second psychic was teaching people how to be psychic.
Oh, yeah.
Two completely opposing pieces of information. The first one was right. You know? But that had me running in circles for a really long time.
Okay.
And that's probably why this piece of truth was so important.
At the end.
Because
Yes.
it made it, you know, their ideas of my truth, right, created a big doubt of my self-truth, right? And I do believe in psychics, so they just have to be healthy, really healthy, to where they can be completely present, or we can, in that person's truth without your history influencing, right? Obviously, something was influencing truth in the situation. So yeah, him admitting it, like, was a big gig, right?
I'm admitting it to somebody other than you.
It was like validation, like truth was validated, and then it made it easier even to let go of because it was validated.
Yeah, it just like left. Like I literally had about 4 days where I could not even think. I felt like everything was reorganizing in my whole system.
It was.
Yeah, it was just like I couldn't think, right? I slept, I would get up.
And you would drain. You're just like, weren't you just draining from your nose?
Oh yeah, it was the weirdest thing. Like just stuff was running out of me. Like it was just like a whole like.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's wonderful.
That is. It's like liberating, probably feels very liberating, even.
Well, you know,
Continue.
as soon as I got the news, I said to my brother, it feels like freedom, and not just for me, right? For all of us. It just, and for him, like it just feels like freedom. Now, one thing that's interesting is all of my sexual abusers have dementia really bad with no reason for them having it. And, you know, it's interesting because my brother says to me, he goes, do you think that's the guilt?
Mm-hmm. Perhaps. A man my mother was married to that molested me, he had dementia.
That's what I'm saying. Mhm.
Yeah.
My dad and my uncle. I don't know about the other guy.
Well, if he was an alcoholic, then that kind of fried his brain as well.
Well, but he quit drinking like years ago and never touched it again. And my dad was one of the smartest human beings I have ever met. Like, he had a photographic memory. He never went to school. And I swear to goodness, like, he could stand in the room of college professors and turn you on your ear, right? I watched him sit with the priests were always coming to our house to convert him. And holy moly, he sat and read that Bible cover to cover. They couldn't
Wow.
even begin to sit in that room with him. Everything that he would come in with, like, you know, the number of the verse and, you know, what page it was on, everything they said he had a counter to
Oh,
from
yeah.
that Bible. And it was real. Yeah.
Wow.
He was one of the smartest. And, you know, that's one thing Carol kept saying is, you know, by the end, he couldn't write his name.
Mhm.
So you wonder how much of dementia is guilt and the struggle to not remember, right?
Interesting.
Because dementia is us, you know, not remembering, right? What is true and what's real, right? And no one is one dimensional, right? My dad was absolutely beautiful, right? Charismatic. Like, wherever he went, there were people gathering around him.
Ugh.
He was what he felt full on. If it was love, full on, right? If it was hate, full on, right? He lived very closely in a set of rules. They just weren't everyone else's, right? And, you know, this brilliantly magical, extraordinary being moved into survival mode at a very young age and became a predator, right? Because some really bad things happened to him. Really bad
I
things.
was wondering about that. Like, what was his?
Really bad things. Like, yeah.
Hmm.
And he was, you know, I mean, no one will ever know for sure, but his behaviors outlined the fact that he was molested as well, right? They point to that. And his mother, my stepdad knew his mother very well, and he never knew she had children. That's how she operated. Like, she would just go on a drive and drop her kids everywhere and then not pick them up. They'd just be stranded places until they figured out how to get home or did something bad enough that they were sent home. And that became my father. Right? If I go in and I set fire to your barn, you're going to send me home. Right? If I go in and do this, you're going to send me home. Right? And that became the way he lived. So nobody's all bad. Everyone's got their story and their path. And, you know, I think forgiveness becomes truly about seeing what we can find in there that is light.